Alright everybody, this is going to be the Blood Angels video. I'm going to be covering a few things in this topic. The first thing is just currently where my list is sitting at. I did post something earlier where I was sitting at about 1500 points, which would be my pure core. In my app right now, this is what you see on the screen. This is where I'm at the moment, and I believe this comes out to 1720 total. I'll go through the few add-ons that I have, and they're just for keepsake, just so I can get an even number of points in my list, because I hate when things are like 1655 and I'd rather just have it in single digits or whatever, number fives at the end. The other thing I'm going to cover in this list or in this video is what are people going to be taking, what lists you're seeing right now, and some small topic about how this game works, in terms of you're gonna see many Blood Angel lists out there, and you're gonna see many different types, many different formats of terrain and whatnot. But most importantly, it's good for you to understand why why a list is better than the other one and what makes the best list. Because even if you said 100% this is the best Blood Angels list, period, kind of like World Leaders with Anthony Vanilla, just always having people just copy his list, it's the best list, and even he says this is the best list. There's other archetypes. You can go down with Lord of Skulls or Forge Fiends, that's fine. But then there's the same archetype, just like a worse version of it. And I'm not I don't really like that. I come from a card game background, and when I see that you have flavor choice, respect, but when I see that you're just trying to do your own thing when the best thing already exists, like a gold bar is there, you're trying to recreate gold, you're kind of foolish for that. So I don't like that. And I don't like that in Warhammer especially because there's so much of it. Now, if you don't own the models, I understand that, but in a hobby where every single player dropping thousands of dollars buying whatever is there for competitive reasons or just for collection, there's no reason not to have whatever is the best thing. Okay. So that's the second thing I want to talk about. And the third thing is going to be the important part, which is how to play Blood Angels and what you're going to notice, and what me and I've seen Art of War talk about it a little bit as well, now that the points came out, have noticed and are leaning towards, which is just a lot of trash. Okay. And I'll go into why and how to use it, and why you got to be good with using trash, especially in Space Marines, and why you're not going to want to lean towards just having 3 units of Sanguinary Guard or 3 units of Death Company in your list. You might table people with it, but a 400 point brick isn't something you actually want to keep. And I'll talk about one other thing I want to talk about as well is the characters. So this might be a longer video, just going over some of the characters, the reasoning behind them, behind some of the units, and yeah, in-depth talk about that. So if you want a longer Blood Angels video, this is for you. If you want a short one, feel free to skip through it, or yeah, essentially just skip through to the parts where I'm not talking about the list anymore and other stuff. So let's start out with the list because it's on the screen right now. This is my 1720 list, or 1750, whatever it is, points. There's some things in this list that you would get rid of to make it super bare bones. So this is currently my bare bones list, but there's a few things added to it to not make it extreme. So you would want to cut one of the infiltrators out, cut one of these scouts out at the bottom here, and then you want to cut one of these assault intercessors with jump pack out. That's when you would hit the bare bones 100%. Everything else is 100% necessity if you're going for this list. And on top of that, the characters, the ones that is not auto include is Chief Librarian Mephiston, but for a lot of you guys that do own it or want to run it, we're gonna keep him in here. That's why I have him in there, because he is a lone op, he is good, and I think you're gonna wanna start learning how to get the most out of him. Whether that's crucial or not, I think he's just very good. As anybody will say, he's very good. The ultimate price is, would you rather have this or a Ballistics Dreadnought? Would you rather have this or another unit of like assault intercessors and a captain or something? That's what it comes down to. Do you need something else that you're not going to take him, or do you just put him in there because he's a cool character, he does what he does, and he's a cool tech piece with lone op? Most likely though, it's just because he's cool. Like, that's the only reason he's in the list. If this guy did not, if this guy said like Blood Angels captain, and then it was an enhancement to give him lone op with the 4 Fuel No Pain, I wouldn't do it. But because it's a named character, he's in the list right now, just like Gilliman or Uther might be in your Votan list. Okay, he's just cool, so he's in there. Okay, so moving forward, we get rid of these things. You can make this exact list in your app. I would keep this separate and go down and then fill it in with whatever you want. Basically, we'll talk about a few things that you want to be filling it in later. So this is the list I'm going with. This is what I have at the moment. I always keep it to the side, I duplicate it, and then I put in other units like Repulse Executioners, Gladiators, Ballistics Dreadnoughts, whatever, Vindicators, whatever you're trying to run, until you find the list that you really like, right? If you want a second Death Company brick, cool, but if you're going to RTT, it'd be fun. If you're just smashing someone's face in, it's fun. If you're trying to go 5-0, 6-0, you might not want the second Death Company brick. Right. And all about your local meta as well. So, this is my core. It's really good. The Blood Angels captain with Assault Intercessors is 100% necessity. It's very, very strong. Even in normal Space Marines in general, a captain with Assault Intercessors with reroll all to hit, all to wound is insanely powerful. It's one of our most efficient ways of just doing damage, and also you get a free CP with the captain. So 100% you want to be running this. Chief Librarian Mephiston is there for coolness, but there are Lone Op is a strong rule by itself. A small fight first character with 4 Fuel No Pains is strong by itself. I personally, I think the way you want to get the most use out of Mephiston is you can rapid ingress him, number 1. So if you really want to, and you guys are like following along the coachings and like how to use rapid ingress, and on that stage, you can actually just rapid ingress Mephiston off a board edge outside of 12 inches from guns, cannot be shot, 9 inches away from somebody, advance him up the board, pay a CP, make him battle shocked on purpose, and then he can shoot and charge, right? I guess you don't have to battle shock him, you just pay a CP, give him advance and shoot, and then his advance and charge built in. And then that's the way to get the most uses out of him. That is CP reliant. And the issue with this army is that you're actually trying to save your command points quite often, because you always need them to advance charge every single turn. So that's gone. You always need them to grenade or armor of contempt. So that's gone. And then you need rapid ingress at some point in the game. So there's lots of strats you're trying to get uses out of. Even fallback and charge is on turns like 3, 4, 5 are important when your Sanguinary Guard or your Death Company are alive and you go for a big turn. You need to fall back and charge, and you still need usually something else as well, like advanced charge somewhere else or grenade somewhere else. But I found myself lacking in that area. Yeah, so Mephiston is cool, he's good. That's how I would try to use him. I'm going to try to use him that way in my future games. Commander Dante plus the Sanguinary Brick is super strong. I think this is the one unit that is 100% mandatory in every single list. It's not going anywhere. Run it. It's the best unit you have. You have to run this. Lamarties plus Death Company Marines. Why do I have Lamarties over the other dude who gives dead wounds to the whole unit? Is because with the Fuel No Pains, you're only going to save like one of your dudes from dying if they're getting shot at a lot. Or whatever. But with Lamarties with -1 damage, there's a lot of damage to guns that just don't hurt them anymore. And he's cheaper than the other person. And he gives lethal hits. So I'd rather have lethal hits with full reels to hit at a shit ton of damage too, and have it cheaper, plus the durability, than just have devastating wounds. Devastating wounds is really strong. If you take a second Death Company brick, you can run the other dude, especially if you get rid of the Chief Librarian Mephiston. But he's not on my list because I'm gonna get to like all the trashes you need later on. Impulsor is necessary for the Assault Intercessor Squad to get extra movement. Also, the Impulsor can, after you use it to kind of disembark or get these guys up the board safely, you're going to be wanting to just use it to screen something or go out and do an action. Also, it's the only bring it down in your list. So I just love when my opponent draws bring it down. On turn 1 or 2, they can't recycle it and they got to score this little tiny 2 points, and they can't even do that. And then on turns 4 and 5, if they do kill the Impulsor with bring it down, again they gotta commit to it, they gotta kill the Impulsor, and again it's only 2 points, and that means they're not pitching it for another command point, which can come up big. And most players are not going to understand, do you score 2 points and bring it down, do you recycle it immediately for a command point, or do you pitch it on turn 4 for a CP that you're going to need on turn 5 for like a bigger play, or to recycle secondaries on turn 5, etc. Jump pack intercessors are insane in Blood Angels. Run 2 squads minimum. I like 3 squads, which is up here, but 2 squads is the bare minimum. These guys slap like crazy, throw a grenade, charge, do charge mortals. A lot of people have been trying to overwatch this unit when I run it, kill like 1 to 2 of them. So the charge mortals are lowered, and the damage output, but I just roll 4-ups and they take mortals anyways. They do a lot of damage, especially with like 1 CP lance or lethals. It's really good. Death Company with, by the way, if you guys are playing other Marines, do not, like, Assault Intercessors and other Marine lists, I only take 1 now, just so I have something fast to get up the board. Or I can just swap these out for more scouts, because they infiltrate, they already can get to wherever I need them to go. And I save a shit ton of points. So, yeah. These guys are not needed in normal Space Marine lists, but because of Blood Angels, you can advance and charge, but most importantly, you get +2 strength and +1 attacks. It's hella good. Death Company jump packs needed for my unit here. Big damage with Lamarties, cool. 1 unit infiltrators is mandatory at the moment for Space Marines, just so there's no reserves coming in from your backfield. If you go down to 0 infiltrators, okay, the meta would have to get away from all the 3-inch deep strikes and all of the rapid ingresses and all of like the deep striking armies like demons and all this stuff. Currently, we are not in that meta. Every single army just has it, and so you need 1 unit infiltrators minimum. If it changes down the road or next edition or whatever, you can go back to running 0 infiltrators, but for a lot of you, I recommend that you run at least 1 infiltrator squad no matter what, because you're going to have to use a lot more brain power and a lot more like time on the clock trying to screen out every single edge, every single deep strike, and having to use advanced tactics and understanding of board position and what your opponent's going to do to leave giant holes in your deployment zone where your opponent can't come inside, but they're not going to do as much damage as you would like, as they would like to. They're going to hit like your scouts, your other units, but the main core of your army is going to be intact. With infiltrators, you don't got to worry about that, and you can just be like 12 inches, no-go zone, you're good, right? This is why the second unit was in here, because currently there's so much goddamn 3-inch deep strike, guard, demons, everything. I just don't want to deal with it. Like, I don't want to use my brain power to dealing with that. And people just can't score behind enemy lines. They can't score homers. They can't score whatever, mark for death, because they can't get back into my base. And I can just be like, mark for death, both my infiltrators and Dante's squad. Like, good luck trying to kill that. When Dante's just hiding behind the wall and is unchargeable, unshootable. So, yeah. At the moment I would just start every single Space Marine list with 2 infiltrators, but for this example right here, it's super bare bones. So you can adjust all the points. Secondary guard, go with Dante, needed. This unit hits super hard. It's like one of our only units that just kills like anything in the game almost in one go. So it's 100% needed, especially if those Inferno pistols can get some nice melter shots off. You can actually kill anything, like Shalaxi or like any big demon. Great and clean one, not so much, but anything else is gonna get hurt like hell. And then 1 unit of scouts. So you can go up to 2 units like I have here. Honestly, Space Marines have been nerfed so much that you just don't have points. Like, you don't have points to run 2 units of scouts. And so the bare bones is 1, just so you can screen, you can infiltrate and deny room from your opponent moving up, like Votan. You can do early objectives, and you're not worried about losing 65 points. Also in Blood Angels, all the scouts hit harder for +2 strength, +1 attack. Everything just hits harder, so these cheap units actually hit as hard as like Assault Intercessors almost, okay? In a different Space Marine army. Which I really like. Reavers are another option currently. With Battle Shock tests that combo with Mephiston and Dante. And they're also really cheap for 25 attacks at 1 damage apiece. Plus the shooting, well, if you take shooting, but mostly just the melee. Just cheap, 75 points, 25 attacks is pretty ridiculous for a Space Marine body. So consider those options. Okay, that's everything here. We're going to move on from all of this, all this jazz. So let's get rid of this shit. Let's go into TTS. And let's quickly talk about these characters, okay? So you're wondering, why do I not have the Sanguinor in my list, or should I add him? What about the Klexus Assassin that everybody runs and is like OP? And Mephiston we already talked about, so we're just gonna leave him off to the side. And the Martis we talked about, we're going to leave them to the side. Dante's to the side. And then it's these 2 guys. Okay? Mostly when we're talking about these 2, because these are tech pieces. And tech pieces are not a necessity. And in my opinion, both of these are a win more or win easier type of units. So let's start with the Klexus Assassin because everybody runs this. Klexus Assassin is extremely powerful because of its aura of just, like, if you're debating on taking a second scout unit or a assassin, I would just take the assassin if you have the points for it. And to perfect your list. But if you were just taking the assassin just for the aura of Vect and making sure that your opponent's stratagems cost 1 more, that's where it's iffy. Is she super good? Yes. Is she worth the 100 points? I'm going to say yes. But this is a tech piece. This, in my opinion, was only really, really strong against Space Marines. And specifically because Dark Angels were in the meta very heavily. And Dark Angels really heavily relied on 1 CP advanced charge, 1 CP like armor contempt in multiple places, and so on. So, and also like interrupts and things like this. When I use the Klexus Assassin against, I only really use it against worse players most of the time, and that's why I don't bring it in any of my lists. When I'm playing against my brother or some clients or local guys, I don't bring the Assassin because it makes my opponent sit there and be like, oh, I can't use the strat that I wanted to use, like armor contempt. I can't use an interrupt, and I have to be way more aware of my CP usage. And most people just want to play the game and spend their resources to have fun or to make sure that they get that reroll into a charge. They make sure that their tank lives on like 1 wound with a reroll. They want to make sure that they can do any cool combos. And Klexus Assassin just shuts all that down. So it's really a feels bad for your opponent, and it's really, really strong if your opponent does not play around it. And in all of my games, my opponents are positioning their units too close to me or willy-nilly, or they're relying on the fact that, oh, I'm used to playing against whoever, and my army is tanky enough that I'm going to pop armor contempt, I'm going to spend a CP reroll, I'm going to go for this deep strike, I'm going to reroll it, blah blah blah, and this stops all of it, which is why I don't bring it. I think it's a win more, and if there's armies in the game that rely heavily on defense, okay, strictly on defense, either with CP interrupt or with heroic gimmicks or with armor contempt and defensive mechanisms like feel no pains, etc., this is when the assassin shines, in my opinion. Is when you're going really hard on your opponent, or they overstep, and you shut off all the defensive tools, or you make them choose between one or another, or one out of three. They can't get all three, they only get one out of the three now. So this is when she really shines, which is why I don't run her. Because she's really expensive, she's really good, and if I'm going to use her, you have to understand how to use her, when to use her, and you're going to win the game way harder and get through hurdles that you couldn't otherwise through like her gimmick of CP abuse. But this only works against opponents that don't really know what they're doing. So if you do just feel like you need to increase your win rate, or somebody's playing an extremely durable army and they keep using strats against you, take her. Otherwise, just leave her on the side. Fill in your army list with something else. Okay, not a technical piece. Just do it. Do more damage. Do more transports. Do more scoring. Do anything else. Just take a Sanguinor instead. Let's talk about the Sanguinor. Sanguinor is another gimmick, just like her. Except this dude comes in, fights first, and whoops like 5 jump pack intercessors or whoever. The sad part is that when he comes in, he doesn't count as making a charge, and so he's not as good as he is if he were to charge with Blood Angels. So he just kind of comes in without the Blood Angels army rule, and doesn't hit as hard as you should. Strength 6 AP 3/2 damage is not what you want. You want strength 8 AP 3/2 damage. That's way better. So, and 9 attacks. With 8 attacks, he's still good. He's going to wipe out a trash unit. He's going to stop your opponent from piling in every single thing to kill your Sanguinary Guard. You can sacrifice him and stuff. I think he's way more useful in the detachment where you have the 1 CP. Everything has to target the Sanguinor. The like angel sacrifice, whatever stratagem is called. So I think he's better there if we're going to try to use him. In this detachment, he is good, but I think it's a win more. I think you show up to a game, your opponent goes, I want to charge you with Black Templars or their own Blood Angels, and you go, okay, here's the Sanguinor, I fight first, I wiped your squad, and you just got gotched, okay? So it's kind of like a gotcha, and if your opponent understands how to play around it, or that this thing actually doesn't do any damage, if you guys have been listening to The Art of War, like Jack and stuff have talked about it. Siegler's talked about the fact that he brought this guy in, and my opponent just went, I don't care. I'll just kill him and the unit, right? I'll take a damage. I'll lose like 8 bound was their example. In my example, I would just lose like something like a Terminator or 2, and then I would just wipe the squad anyways. So it doesn't matter. The main use for him, in my opinion, is to obviously counter your opponent's trash. That's acceptable, but he's very expensive for that role. I can just take more trash or a bigger unit of trash. The main reason for him is when your opponent charges you and they're trying to like line up this charge into like, let's say this assault into the squad, and their Sanguinary Guard are like trailed back like this, and they're all like trying to base, right? But their Sanguinary Guard are like trailed back. This is the only time the Sanguinor is way more useful, because then you can come in and base to base these two guys, and then these two guys have to go closer to Sanguinor and base him. So all 4 of these guys have to kill the Sanguinor, and then these 3 guys are left to basically fight the Assault Intercessors. Okay? Which realistically, the sanguinary guard will still wipe the whole fucking assault ancestor squad. But just pretend this was your own sanguinary guard, and Dante's like ready to go in as well. That's when it causes problems. So this heroic intervention is what's gonna cause problems, and it's the main reason to take him. If you're looking for a specific matchup where you're gonna need to fight a lot of melee armies, and you're trying to go for this play exactly, take him. Otherwise, he's not in my lists. He's a cool unit, just like Mephiston. You can take him for coolness. Lone Op is really valuable. He moves really fast. And I think people might start taking him just to rapid ingress him in, like I did in one of my games. He's Lone Op, then he can move 12, charge. He gets all of the Blood Angel buffs, and then wipes a whole squad in your opponent's deployment zone, or advances charges and gets super far into the opponent's lines and really messes stuff up. But yeah, so that's why I don't really, all these like characters, these three especially, are not needed. They're just solo lone up characters, and each have their own unique tools that you want to be using it for. This is pile-in gimmicks, this is stratagem defensively gimmicks, and the Mephiston Librarian is like just the coolest model, and he's good at holding down an objective by himself in melee matchups. I think if melee armies are extremely relevant, or a new army comes out in the future, like the new Emperor's Children, the CSM armies, or a Votan melee army comes out, these guys will become more useful. But at the moment, I feel like they're just too overcosted. I think the Sanguinor can go down 20 points at least. At least can go down 20 points. I think the Collector's Assassin is already a bit overcosted and should go back down to like 90 points, but that's not going to happen. And then the Mephiston is like, he's definitely overcosted. I think he should be like 110 points for a non-flying lone up with the Feel No Pain, but doesn't have a super crazy rule like the Sanguinor. He instead has a Feel No Pain. So I would pay 80 points for Captain, 30 points for like a Feel No Pain / Fight First on a named character is fine. I think you should go down to like 110 points. Then I think people will start seeing him more, but 125 is pretty expensive. You can pretty much take another unit. That's the problem. When these guys are more expensive than a whole unit, or as expensive as a unit, I'd rather just take the unit. I can take 3 Sanguinary Guards, or I can take 1 Mephiston. It's like 3 Sanguinary Guards probably kill Mephiston, and Mephiston won't kill the 3 Sanguinary Guards. Like, yeah, even with Fight First. Well, with Fight First, I guess he would probably kill 1 or 2, and then take a bunch of damage, and then yeah. But either way, those are the lone up characters. This is the list. Everything's fine. Don't need to talk about it. Okay, now let's go into what you're gonna be seeing in the meta, and what people are trying out right now, and what I'm doing, and why I think it's way better. So what you're gonna be seeing in the meta at the moment is sanguinary. Basically everything I just said right here, everything that's over here. Let's exclude the named characters. We're not gonna include them in the list. You're gonna be seeing the Sanguinary Guard with Dante 100%. You're gonna be seeing the Captain with Assault Intercessors. You're gonna be seeing triple jump pack guys, Impulsor for this unit. Most likely going to be seeing 2 scout units and 2 infiltrator units, but most likely 1 or 2, just whatever the person decides. You're going to be seeing Death Company, which I don't have out here, but Death Company with Lamarties, and most of the time you're going to be seeing a second Death Company unit. So you're going to be seeing 3 giant bricks of just death. Okay, now that style is going to work. It's going to do a lot of damage, but in my opinion, and in most people's opinions that play a lot of Blood Angels, you can't go pure melee. You need guns, especially on the type of format you're playing on. A lot of you guys play on GW, and a lot of you guys also play on WTC. So it's kind of split half and half. And it's going to come down to your terrain and the missions and all this. So you're not going to be taking 3 units of Death Company and like Sanguinary Guard and just going like super melee heavy, you're gonna need some guns. The other thing you're gonna need, the route that I'm going down, is more trash. Okay, you can see I have 2 scout units, 3 jump pack units, assault intercessors, an impulsor, which is also trash, just to do actions or to take up space, and then 2 units of infiltrators. I am very heavily gonna go down the route of adding in more and more trash. Reavers, another unit of assault intercessors with a captain, with the turn a dice to a 6 for an extra devastating wound, just a little bit of juice, is very good. Stern guard, okay, intercessors for sticking objectives and to just go out, throw a grenade, shoot something dead is very good. I'm actually going to be using stern guard or intercessors as a reserve threat. It comes in, it's very cheap. I don't care if my opponent pays a CP to overwatch it. Most likely they're not going to. And then they're just going to be shooting with their bolters, their grenade launcher, and picking up like 5 Eldar units, picking up whatever I need to just do a little bit of chip damage into. And also zoning out any rapid and aggressive deep strikes for 90 points, 80 points. It's really cheap, really effective, and does a little bit of extra damage. If I worse into hordes, Tyranids, Gaunts, whatever, gargoyles, like 1 damage guns are actually quite useful against all of those armies. And Eldar Codex, Guard Codex is coming out. So all the 1 damage bolters are actually going to add up. Grenades going to add up. Which is why I'm thinking about it. And you do need that little bit of extra shooting is going to go a long way. The other reason why I'm adding in a little bit of Stern Guard, or basically MSC versions of shooting jump pack intercessors, is because when I'm going for my charges, a lot of my opponents, and I'm going to make a video about how to stop melee armies, because that was the second video I'm going to make. Not going to talk too much about it in this video, but I'll probably give an example or two. A lot of my opponents, like my brother, he would put units in front of his Land Raider, in front of his break. I was versing Demons the other day, Ted, and he was wrapping his Bellacore with like his infantry or his dogs. And my way around it was to shoot it dead. And when people start doing it, I need a little bit of extra shooting, like inceptors or anything, to just blow up a hole so my charges can make contact. And especially with guard, or other people might be getting 3 in deep strikes in the future, and negating your 6-inch charges with just rapid ingressing Nurglings, rapid ingressing the new guardsman unit, inceptors, if they ever go down in points. Your charges are going to fail and you're going to get tabled the same turn. On your go turn, your charges won't connect, you'll just lose. Now against Blood Angels, it's a little bit harder to do it because we have the fly keyword, and we hit really fucking hard. But you can do it. So to get around that, I'm going to have Stern Guard or something small. At the moment, I'm just using scouts. They come in off a board edge, they shoot a heavy bolter, they shoot a sniper rifle, and they have shotguns, and they chip damage away. I throw a grenade with the jump pack guys, or whoever, Sanguinary Guard, shoot, right, clear a hole, and that's how I get through the defensive lines of my opponent's army. That's what I like. The next part is gladiator tanks and ballistic dreadnoughts and all this stuff. Okay. Here is my gripe, and here's what most people that are very competitive or make content are going to be saying. Everybody agrees ballistic dreadnoughts are very cheap, but here's the fucking problem with ballistic dreadnoughts. They are not consistent in damage output. You can either get all the wounds through, you hit with 4, you wound with 4, your opponent fails all the saves because they roll all 1s and 2s. Congratulations, the ballistic dreadnought did something. On the other end though, the ballistic dreadnought has AP2, AP3. Everything in the game is covered, so realistically is AP1, AP2. And then if your opponent is taking 3 up saves on a 2+ armor on a tank, it's not taking any damage. If they have armor contempt, which is what most armies in the game have, even like non-space marine factions have it now, you're doing 0 damage to guardsmen. You're doing 0 damage to anything in the game, because your AP2 becomes AP0 and your AP3 becomes AP1. On a 2-up save goes to a 3-up. The dude is going to make every single save, and your Ballistic Dreadnought's going to stand there dealing 0 damage. Which is why people run the Gladiator Lancer, because it has an extra pitch of AP, and if a single shot just goes through, it's AP3 with D6 plus 3 damage. That's a lot of damage, probably as much damage as a Ballistic Dreadnought's going to do if you just get a single wound through. It has a higher AP count, so your opponent can't just rely on cover and AOC. If they don't have AOC, they're just going to most likely fail the saving throws. The Gladiator Lancer is also going to give them 2 saves, so there's a 50-50 chance that one of them's going to go through for sure. The other one might or might not. And if you have multiple of these things, then you're going to be getting a lot of damage through for sure. And guess what? They counter Ballistic Dreadnoughts. Why? Because they have extra AP, they have bigger guns, and they don't give a fuck about a Ballistic Dreadnought shooting into Armor Contempt and cover and all that jazz. And smoke if you need it. The Repulsed Executioner is the 1 step higher though. D6 plus 4 damage. Insane amounts of damage on a 2-shot gun. Unfortunately, it's kind of expensive. But it can also carry your Assault Intercessors. So I really like the Repulsed Executioner. I think it's been one of the best tanks the Space Marines have since the beginning of the edition. 220 points for 42 shots, and then the 2 giant ass last like super guns is super nice. 16 wounds, 2-up save. Not 2-up save. 16 wounds, T12, 3-up save, which is its only downside, is that it's got 3-up save and not a 2-up save, which means when it's being shot, you have to pop smoke if you're going to try to keep this alive with Armor Contempt. It's not going to have the durability as a Land Raider without the 2-up save. And this thing's got AP4, which basically, if you're shooting at a Rhino, doesn't get a save. If your detachment, not in Blood Angels, but in your detachment in something else, can ignore cover, that thing is going through 4-up saves, 3-up saves. A Land Raider is just giving a Land Raider a 6-up save at all times, ignoring cover. And the Land Raider is probably going to explode into like 2 pieces, okay? So, Repulsed Executioners are really good for that big gun. You're essentially looking for anything that has a lot of AP, has big damage, and is quite durable. The final unit that people are looking at for shooting is the Vindicator. Why? Because the Vindicator is T11, which is really good because there's a lot of T10, strength 10 guns in the game. It has a 2-up save, which is why it's better than the Gladiator tanks and the Repulsor Executioner. And it has inconsistent damage on D6, but it can spike up or down. And it can't really be tagged. And it has a 100 killer missile on top of it. So it's kind of iffy, but it's more durable than a Repulsor Executioner just because of the 2-up save. So you're really banking on the 2-up save, Armor Contempt, cover, smoke, which is a 0-up save with -1 to hit at all times. T11, that's really strong. And it's gives you a bigger spike in damage against something like a Slash Demon or a Great Unclean One at strength 14. It just really hits really hard, and it's cheaper than the Repulsed Executioner. It's kind of like an upgrade to the Gladiator Lancer if you're looking for something a little bit more durable and a little bit more damage heavy, but not as consistent. The AP is only 3, but that's fine. So the Vindicator, probably going to get nerfed. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it comes down 5 more points for Space Marines. Those are the anti-tanks people are taking. I personally am not taking any of these, and I'll tell you why in a second. I do think you need guns, but that's why I'm taking intercessors and like really, really cheap stuff to shoot. I might even take Desolation Marines just so that I can shoot things and pick up screens. But at the moment I'm just really relying on just charging things and killing it. If I was going to take tanks, by the way, I would either take Vindicators or Gladiator Lancers. A lot of lists you'll see have only 2 tanks that shoot long range. Personally, I think you kind of have to go down the route of having 3, because your opponents are also going to have anti-tank, long range shooting, and when you start losing your tanks, it gets harder and harder to do what you want, which is why I'm saying that I might be going down the route of more trash and move blocking things and playing the scoring game and having some like random lone op in my list, like Chief Librarian here, rather than having shooting and getting rid of my problem. I'll let my problem live on the tabletop, but go about a different way of handling it with either move blocking, screening myself off, lone op, going fixed for secondaries, and having a huge threat projection of, hey, I'm behind this wall. If you dare come near me, I'm going to just kill you. And what I've found with that is normally a normal Blood Angel list that runs 2 Gladiators, for example, when you kill my Jump Back Intercessors and you kill my Assault Intercessor squad and my Scouts, on turn 3, I have to send in everything. But because I don't run the Gladiators and I run like a 3rd Jump Pack unit, I run Reavers, I run a 2nd unit of Assault Intercessors, and maybe I run like Chief Librarian Mephiston, or a 3-man secondary guard, etc. I don't need to full commit my big bricks, and it keeps my opponent back for like an extra turn. So my go turn doesn't come to like the bottom of 3 or start of 4, which is quite interesting, which is why I prefer having way more trash, like just endless amounts of trash, because Blood Angels in the main detachment, the Sons of Sanguinius, which is now called the Liberator Assault Force, just has so much melee damage that it's like really good. It almost makes you like, Space Marines are hitting how hard Space Marines should hit for being Space Marines, instead of being like little fucking bitches and having strength 4 AP 0 1 damage. Like, it's actually useless. So that's what you're going to be seeing at the current moment. For all of you that want to run Land Raider Redeemers and stuff like this, you can. I highly suggest you don't run the Land Raider Redeemer. It's too goddamn expensive, and honestly, I never enjoyed it in the first place. I think when it was like 260 and held a lot, there was an option for taking it, but now that the normal repulsor carries a lot more, there's no reason to take the Land Raider. And if your opponent can kill a repulsor or a Land Raider, they're going to kill anything in your army, with Lancers and like Gladiators being in people's lists, and Eldar coming back into the meta with a lot of anti-tank, which they should have done fucking forever ago. Your tanks are not going to live. So don't, like, if a guard sees your Land Raider, it's going to fucking shoot every single Demolisher Cannon at it and just blow it out of the fucking water. So it's honestly useless. You want to have just a lot more ground units. Impulsors are fine. A basic repulsor is fine. A repulsor executioner is also acceptable, because you can just upgrade the repulsor into a tank that carries the same amount pretty much and shoots really, really heavily. You're going to be seeing bloody Judiciaries with Fight First and Blade Guard, because they're going to battle shock themselves when your opponent charges in and basically gives you +1 strength, +1 attacks. Fight First, you'll basically do a shit ton of damage with reroll 1s or reroll 1s to save. That unit you're going to see a lot. Now, there's a thing to be said that we have a lot of Fight First we have access to. We can take Judiciaries, we have pure melee. We can take Blade Guards with them, and we can also take a Captain or something like Chaplain with the Fight First once per game enhancement in this army. Those things are really strong, but to save us time, they go back to the Assassin or Mephiston. Fight First is really good until your opponent knows how to get around it. I think if you have so much Fight First in Blood Angels, and you hit so hard that even if you lose half your squad, you're just going to be doing so much damage. It doesn't matter. I think that is 100% acceptable if you want to go down that route. But in my opinion, I don't really want to do that. I think that list will be really good for teams. But for singles, I don't want to show up with all the fight first units, and then my opponent brings guns, and I'm like, I guess this is useless. So I think having one tech piece of fight first could be cool, or having an MSU fight first. But it's like, if you like it, if you want to win games like that, it's cool. Me personally, I'm gonna have a little bit more shooting, more trash, and I'm gonna play around the fight first by just doing gimmicks. And if you don't know how to beat fight first, then you don't know how to set up your fight first correctly to not be taken advantage of by mispositioning your units. Okay, so until you master fight first and you master the whole art of combat and the fight phase, don't go super into fight first unless you're just trying to like show up and your opponent just shows up with Custodes, Templars, or some melee army, and he can't charge you, but he has to charge you because of the melee army, and you just win the game by default because you have fight first everywhere. Yeah, and if you're too reliant on it, you might just get slapped across the face super hard for trying to win through a gimmick. A really strong gimmick, but a gimmick at the end, nonetheless. Okay, we talked about that now. We talked about my list. We talked about what you're going to see in the meta. We talked about why to not take Land Raiders, why to take Gladiators or Executioners. Ballistic Dreadnoughts, don't take them, is my personal opinion. If you want to take one or two just because you own it, you don't own the other stuff, cool. But personally, Gladiators counter Ballistic Dreadnoughts, and Ballistic Dreadnoughts don't do any damage, and we have no way of buffing our shooting, so we're kind of screwed. So just take a Repulse Executioner, or take a Gladiator Lancer times X, or a Vindicator times X for your shooting. And try out some Stern Guard. There's other videos out there talking about Stern Guard being like 50 attacks on the charge and also having like 30 shooting shots. So 80 attacks in total. Really strong. There's also a tech piece of adding in a lieutenant to the Stern Guard, so you can give it the turn of dice to a 6 on its pistol. He has a devastating 2 damage pistol, the Volkite pistol, and it makes your Stern Guard gain lethal hits. So you can kind of use that to make your lieutenant always be doing 2 dev wounds per turn. If you take him solo, not solo, but with a 5-man squad, you could kind of keep him alive over the course of 1 or 2 turns, 2 or 3 turns probably, and just kind of do 2 chip dev wounds every single time. Pretty useful. Okay, ignoring all that, the video's a bit long. It's supposed to be. Yeah. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, that people call it, of why am I taking more trash and how the fuck do I play Blood Angels. Okay, this is like what you guys came up for. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to break this into 2 parts so that you guys don't have to watch every single thing if you don't want to. So I'm going to close the video here. I'm going to like name it something, and then the second part is going to be how to play Blood Angels actually. Okay, cool.